Well, howdy. Howdy. See, y'all already got broke in real good, right? Howdy. Howdy. I am so glad to be in Fredericksburg, where I can walk into an Ace hardware store and ask for 6 rolls of duct tape, a feather duster, and a jug of Crisco. And Kyle, your employees did not look funny at me at all. They acted like it was natural. I appreciate their poker face. No, look, this is, as Matt said, this has been a long time coming. And when the invitation came, I was ecstatic. Because let me tell you, out of all the places that I've been to on God's green earth, this place right here is one of the most beautiful. It is populated with a people that believe in the fundamental principles that Texas was founded on. And I don't mean believe it in the sense that, it's just something that, kind of a passing phase. You guys really believe it down to your core, don't you? And it's people like you that Texas needs right now. Well, obviously, I'm here to talk about the weather. No, I'm here to talk about TEXIT. But before I start, I'm going to ask y'all the question that I have crisscrossed Texas asking some form of since August 24th, 1996. Now, when I ask this question, this is not a rhetorical question, right? I'm not asking it just to pass some wind over my vocal cords. I really want to know an answer from you. Can you do that for me? Yeah. So here it is. Who in this room right now is ready for TEXIT? Now, normally I'd make you do it again, but I won't, because Angela already made y'all howdy twice. I made you howdy twice, so I'm not going to ask it again. But here's what I want you to understand. Look around the room. Look at the people that shouted out and raised their hand. And I want you to get 2 takeaways from that. Number 1, did you ever believe that you would be sitting in a room full of this many people who are ready to see Texas as a free, independent, self-governing nation among nations? That's pretty awesome. Some of us knew it was an inevitability, right? But some of you are probably surprised at that fact. Not me. I will tell you, in the early days, it was pretty difficult. It was difficult in those early days. You couldn't find other Texas supporters with a hunting dog and a Ouija board, because no one wanted to speak up, right? Because what they tell us? Oh, that's extreme. That's fringe. That's crazy. But deep down, all of us, to some degree, harbored it. Even Matt talked about it. He's like, I was maybe there, but not really ready to give up hope that the union could be fixed. So deep down, all of us to some degree harbored it. So that's the number 1 takeaway, right? But here's number 2. And this is the important one that we all need to understand. According to the political establishment in Austin, you do not exist. If you answered in the affirmative that you are ready for TEXIT, you do not exist. Now, here's what's interesting. I know they're full of crap, and now you do too. 100%, they are full of it. It is absolutely amazing to me when we would talk to these legislators on this issue for all these years, talk to them about TEXIT. There'd be all that backslapping in the office. Oh, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, guys. How many of y'all have experienced that in the legislature, in dealing with legislators? Show, don't be bashful. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? No, not with this guy. This guy's a straight shooter. He actually listens to his constituents. But, all that backslapping, and as soon as you leave the office, they forget that you even existed. Well, guess what? They have said it time and time and time again that people like us don't exist. So congratulations, Fredericksburg. Yet again tonight, you have proven that the political establishment are liars. I think you should give yourselves a hand. Now, here's the thing. I mentioned a moment ago this date of August 24th, 1996. To give you a little backstory, that was the date that I made a personal decision to work for Texas independence, to dedicate my life to seeing Texas as a free, independent, self-governing, sovereign nation among nations. And from that time to this, there has never been a time where we are closer to TEXIT happening, to Texas becoming a self-governing independent nation. And it's not because of what I've done or what our organization's done, although that's helped, but it's because people like you are ready. When you realize that we are being governed by 2.5 million unelected bureaucrats that can leave 13 Marines to die in Afghanistan after a botched evacuation with no commentary whatsoever from the rest of the country, hardly. But yet George Floyd gets cities burned down in his honor. How can we be in that union? How can we be in a union with states that are going to be perfectly fine with the federal government telling your company, if you have over 100 employees, you must vaccinate them or you must test them for COVID daily? How can we be in a union with that? How can we be in a union with a federal government run by 2.5 million elected bureaucrats that steals anywhere from $103 to $160 billion annually from our pockets? How can we do that? How can we be in a union with a federal government that comes in to sue Texas in federal courts over laws that we make to preserve the sanctity of life? How could we be in that union? Where is the union when the Constitution is merely a passing thought, a historical document, a relic that the government that purports to govern us does not observe? When we have to have focus groups on the sanctity of life, that we have to fight over that, or the right to keep and bear arms, because they're under assault every single solitary day. How can we be united on that front? How can we be united with states like California and New York, utilizing the federal government to force their policies on Texas voters, policies we don't get to vote for, policies that we don't want? How can we be united? Well, folks, I'm here with some good news for you. There's a solution. There is something we can do about it. I can't fix California. I can't fix New York. I can't fix Washington, D.C., or Portland, Oregon, or Chicago, Illinois. But as Texans, we can stand up for Texas. Am I right? If you haven't noticed yet, I pace like a panther and sweat like a revival preacher. I hope that flies in this place. Is that all right with y'all? Not a problem, huh? Just making sure. But we can do something about it. Now look, I've alluded to the problem, right? We all understand what the problems are. But let me just run down a couple of things that I think are important to inform this conversation moving forward. You know, when I threw out that figure a moment ago of $103 to $160 billion annually, you do realize that's how much Texans overpay into the federal system, right? So I always love it when people come to us and say, oh my God, you know, when Texas leaves, what are you going to do without all that federal money? It's like, what am I doing without it now? I mean, it literally is the equivalent of going to a doctor, maybe one that would prescribe horse paste or not, I don't know, right? And that doctor withdrawing all the blood out of your body, then being so shaky and incompetent, they spill about 40% of it on the floor, inject the rest of it back into your body, and go, see, you wouldn't be alive without me. That's literally how it works. Imagine for a moment what would happen if that money stayed here in your pocket. Imagine with our consumption tax that we already have, what we could do to reduce our tax burden. You know, things like perhaps elimination of property tax. Now, you know, I never go into a room where anybody goes, no, I love my property tax. Keep your hands off my property tax. Never happens, right? But it's amazing the benefits of Texas independence. But yet, and yes, the challenges are also many, but not insurmountable. Do you know how I know that they are not insurmountable? Professional tip from a guy who's been on the independence train for 25 years. Take notes. Go find a globe, pull it out and spin it around, and put your finger on any landmass, with the exception of Antarctica, as it was pointed out to me recently. And understand that wherever you put your finger, those people are self-governing, independent, and sovereign. That is, unless you put your finger inside the United States, on Texas, or any other state. But you see, that too is a myth. Because Texas is already free and independent, at least it's supposed to be. And we're going to make it again. But I digress. You see, any of those land masses that you put your finger on have figured out all of the things, all of the questions that people raise about Texas independence, about why it would be too difficult. What are we going to do about banking? Well, I don't know. What did 195 other countries do about banking? What are you going to do about currency? I don't know. What did 195 other countries do about currency? What are you going to do about a military? I don't know. 195 countries. Over and over and over. Now, granted, there are some specifics here that we've worked out. I mean, we've had plenty of time to work them out and work them through. But understand this, Texas is starting ahead of the game. In many respects, we are already structurally a nation among nations. It doesn't take much to get us from here to there. The one thing it takes, the biggest hurdle that we have in all these years, have been the people of Texas and our belief that it could be done. And from what I heard at the very beginning of this, there are people in this room that believe that it could be done. Am I right? Okay, just making sure I'm in the same spot. So I'm going to tell you this, and I want you to burn this into your brain for the remainder of our time tonight, because we will do some Q&A afterwards. How many people in here have read the Texas Bill of Rights? Congratulations, those of you that have raised your hands. You are ahead of the vast majority of the Texas legislature. Now, unlike the Bill of Rights to the U.S. Constitution, the Texas Bill of Rights is literally Article 1. It's the first words of the Texas Constitution, the very first words. And you know what those first words are, Article 1, Section 1? Texas is a free and independent state. Amen. Amen. Texas is a free and independent state. You know what else Article 1, Section 1 says? Matt, do you have your ears on?
I'm here.
It says that the perpetuity of the Union depends on the right of local self-government unimpaired to all the states. So you know what that means? That means the moment that our right of local self-government has been trampled on, the Union's done. It's over. So when we have all of those things that I mentioned earlier, mandates on big companies. I mean, they say 100 employees is a big company, right? Amazon is a big company. 100 employees is not a big company. But when they come in and they take away those rights and they remove the ability of the people of Texas to decide our own political destiny, the Union's over. Guess what? That's not Daniel Miller's words. That's the words of the Texas Constitution, that every elected official in Texas has to swear an oath to uphold when they take office. So I'm not saying that it's me. These are not my words. These are the words of our governing document, our Bill of Rights. And our right of local self-government has been trampled. I believe we can agree with that, can we not? Well, lest we feel hopeless, lest we feel like we have no out, because we can't fix California, we can't fix New York, we sure can't fix Washington, D.C., let me tell you what else our Texas Constitution says. Article 1, Section 2, like light breaking over the horizon, all political power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their benefit. And it goes on to say that the people have at all times the inalienable right to alter, reform, or abolish their government in such manner as they may deem expedient. Amen. It says what? All political power is inherent in who? Oh, come on, people. That didn't sound very powerful. I'm going to give you a do-over. It's a mulligan. All political power is inherent in who? The people. And who are we? We're the people. Ultimately, for us, if we want to secure those principles, those rights, those freedoms, our form of government is a constitutional republic, then it's going to be up to who? Now notice it didn't say that all political power is inherent in the politicians, or the pollsters, or the pundits, or the propagandists masquerading as the media. It says all political power is inherent in who? The people. So it is up to us. Ultimately, the responsibility for our political destiny lies in our hands. Enter the T&M. In 2005, we started. For 2 solid years prior to that, we studied independence movements around the world. You see, one of the stats that always blew me out of the box was this one I read in a book by John Nesbitt called Global Paradox back in the 90s, and this is what he said. His thesis of his book was that the world's trends were pointing overwhelmingly toward political independence and autonomy and self-government. And one of the statistics he cited, the one that always blew me out of the box, at the end of World War II, there were roughly 54 recognized, fully sovereign, fully self-governing countries around the world. And by the end of the 20th century, there were 192. Those countries did not fall from space. The earth did not get any bigger. Those were people just like us who were sick and tired of being governed by people that were not them, having policies shoved down their throats that they didn't want, having government lord over their lives without their participation. and they made a decision to reclaim their right of self-government. For 2 solid years, we studied independence movements around the world, and man, we had a wonderful textbook. It's called History. Or, as some people around the world call it, news, because it hasn't really stopped. And so in 2005, we launched the TNM to act as a political advocacy organization to go out and make Texas independence a reality. Patterning ourselves after the successful movements and learning from the mistakes of others, we immediately sought to engage the people of Texas. When we started, support for Texas independence was polling in single digits. But here's the good news. No matter that we were polling in single digits, we've always polled higher than the approval rating of the United States Congress. Not a far stretch, because their approval ratings are always somewhere a little bit above or below that of leprosy, right? What, did I just offend lepers? Did that just happen? But we've always, but here's the thing. There wasn't much polling done on this, but we immediately went out to the people and we talked to people, the people of Texas, and we asked them the question, if Texas independence was a possibility, would you be for it? Well, sure. I didn't know we could do that. And it's what we found literally everywhere we went. And so from 2005 to 2009, we were out there slogging it out, meeting the people of Texas, driving all over the place, just to take this message and let people know that there was an organization out here and that they did not need to be afraid to speak up. And then guess what? God's gift to Texas independence, Barack Obama was elected. Tea Party rally, one of our members shout out the S word that I will not utter on this stage. And the media forced Rick Perry to answer the question. Governor Perry, do you really think Texas could secede? Oh, I said it, didn't I? I got to put $1 in the jar now, sorry. And Rick Perry, rather than backpedaling, here's what he said. Well, if the federal government continues to thumb its nose at Texas, who knows what might come of that? Well, kaboom. So what do you know? Somebody decided to do a poll on it. Research 2000 does this poll, and they ask a question which I think was a little soft, and they ask the question, they say, do you think Texas would be better off as an independent country? Because, you know, they want to embarrass Rick Perry. They want to make it like he's out of touch with the people of Texas. Well, when that poll dropped, jaws dropped. Because at that time, it was 50% of Republicans, 45% of independents, and 15% of Democrats. Well, you know what? The way that Texas votes, that's almost enough to win a general election. Am I wrong? Fast forward to 2014. Scotland is going to the polls to vote on their independence. Reuters does a poll on the issue, and here's the question they ask. Not if we'd be better off, but they ask, should your state become an independent nation? I mean, that's about as legit political as you can get, am I right? Well, when that poll dropped, it wasn't just jaws that dropped. People dropped because the numbers had gone up. 54% of Republicans, half of independent voters, and 35% of Democrats said, yeah, Texas, let's go. Let's bounce. And still Matt wouldn't book me to come speak here. Matt. Matt, I love you, man. I really do. But I mean, imagine that for a moment. You realize those numbers are enough it essentially means that given the way Texans vote, in 2014, if that had been on the ballot, we would have been out of here, right? If it had been on the ballot in 2014, Scotland might have stayed in the UK, but Texas would have been like, boom, where do you want us to put our embassy, guys? And do I have to wear a kilt? I mean, that's where the support is, and it's only gotten greater. And it's easy to understand why. Our path is not the same as the rest of the Union. By the time it's over with, I believe other states will do this as well. Because we cannot be united with a people who do not share our fundamental principles and our collective vision of the future, who do not cherish the right of self-government, who do not cherish our fundamental liberties. And other states are having this conversation too. One of the other largest independence movements in the United States is actually in California, if you can believe it. They came this close to putting the question on the ballot. They don't want to live with us either. They fear the day that we figure out how to clone, somebody figures out how to clone George W. Bush and put him back in the White House. They're scared to death. Or God forbid, if Donald Trump wins in 2024, they would freak out, right? In their minds. I mean, that's what they're looking at. But see, that exposes the real issue, which is we don't have to subject ourselves to this crazy Punch and Judy show every 2 to 4 years to see who gets control of the stick in Washington, D.C. We can let California be California. If they want to run their state into the ground, let them do it. If Texas wants to be a haven for small, medium-sized, large businesses, if we want to be business-friendly and we want to have control over our borders and things, let us do that. But it can't be possible under the federal government. Not this way. And the only solution, my friends, is Texas independence. But beyond those poll numbers, I will tell you right now, I know in my heart of hearts that if we take this issue to the polls tomorrow, TEXIT wins. And it doesn't win by a little, it wins by a lot. Do you want to know how I know this? Do you want to know? I didn't call Miss Cleo's 900 number. How many of you people remember that info? You guys remember Miss Cleo? Well, that's call now for your free reading mine. I remember that. It's not Miss Cleo. Didn't read some tea leaves. I don't have a crystal ball. Here's what I know. I know how Texans think because I've heard from them for 25 years how they think on this issue. But I also know because of this. And I'm going to ask you a question. We're going to play a little audience participation. You guys in? You going to help me with this? We're going to run through a little exercise. And I know it's kind of funny seeing the word exercise come out of this mouth, right? We're going to do a little exercise. So here's what we're going to do. We're all for a moment going to imagine that right now we're sitting here at the Fredericksburg Tea Party meeting. But we're sitting in a free, self-governing, sovereign, independent nation of Texas. Praise God. Right? So we're there. There's one flag that flies over our Capitol. We have control over our own immigration and border policy. That always seems to be important for folks, and I can understand why. But we have our own currency, our own military that we will not abandon in some foreign country, obviously. We have our own monetary policy, our own banking system. We have everything, our own embassies, our own passports, our own Olympic team. You know, it's on the list, people. I'm sorry. It's just on the list. But you're with me, right? We're self-governing in every respect of the word, a nation among nations. And instead of having the question of TEXIT on the ballot, we were asking this question: should the self-governing, independent nation of Texas relinquish its sovereignty and become a state of the United States? How would you vote? That was very groany. You're like, no. I'm not sure if that was a cautious no or a like, man, I can't even deal with that thought. But I want you to think about that for a minute, right? Put the shoe on the other foot for a minute. I mean, think about all those wonderful benefits we're going to get. I mean, we haven't even talked about the federal debt that we're going to inherit, or the 180,000 pages of federal laws, rules, and regulations. If you print them all up and stack them, are taller than the San Jacinto Monument. I mean, those are selling benefits, right? Of course not. So let me ask you that question again. Would you vote today to join the Union? No. Well, if you wouldn't vote to join, then why in the world would you ever vote to stay? And folks, that's how I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that we are going to win. And we're not going to win by a little. TEXIT is going to win by a lot. And what we're going to do on the other side of that is we are going to create one of the most prosperous, self-governing, independent nations the Western Hemisphere and the world have ever seen, built around the principles of freedom, of liberty, of independence. That, my friends, is what a future Texas looks like. And we have an opportunity right now to make it happen. So I'm going to tell you this, because I have wanted to come here and thank Kyle Biederman personally in front of a hometown crowd. My friend, I am so sorry that Matt stood between us, between this magic moment. I love you, buddy. I really do. But I want you to understand something. Daniel Miller probably would not be standing here in Fredericksburg talking to you about TEXIT had it not been for the courage of that man right there. Trust and believe. We fought this fight in the legislature for a long time to give you a vote on the issue, to put it in your hands, not to have the governor decide or the legislature decide, but to let you decide. Pure Article 1, Section 2, all political powers inherent in who? The people. It's your decision where we go. We came close 3 times before. The first time, Attorney General Greg Abbott stood in the way. He stopped it cold in its tracks when a guy like David Dewhurst was willing to move the ball forward. Imagine that. But it was not over some ideological difference. It was because Greg Abbott was concerned about his impending run for governor. Political expediency stopped him. Cowardice and probably some sweet nothings from Karl Rove in his right ear. That's number one. Number two, State Representative Leo Berman from the Tyler area tried to file the legislation. After our meeting with him, and Alan, you remember Leo. Leo was a phenomenal American patriot. He was a Marine. And he was ready to file the legislation to put this to the people of Texas. And we were out of his office 15 minutes before he got summoned to the chairman of the board, Joe Strauss, where Joe Strauss flat told him, if you file this legislation, I will kill every one of your immigration bills. They will go away. Leo backed off of them, and guess what happened? His immigration bills got killed anyway. The third time, State Representative James White, he's now running for Ag Commissioner and currently the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, tried to file it. Legislative Council stripped the referendum out of it, turned it into a resolution, which is nothing. Folks, we don't need any more old man shaking fist at cloud resolutions from the legislature, am I right? No more tersely worded emails. And then fast forward to this session. I'd had the pleasure to work with Kyle on monument protection and things related to the Alamo in the last session. And when this session came around, he showed the ultimate legislative courage by marching right on down and filing the Texas Independence Referendum Act. And so Kyle, from me, from the rest of the Texas Nationalist Movement, I'm sure from your constituents as well, and for people all over Texas, I want to thank you right here and right now for your courage. I love this man dearly, even though I do put in joke orders at his store. And hey, he fought the good fight. When the political establishment thought that he was tilting at windmills, what happened? He had more legislators sign on to the bill. The aforementioned James White, Steve Toth, Jeff Kaysen, Brian Slayton, Phil Stevenson signed on. They couldn't believe it. Like, how do these guys sign on to the bill? And let me tell you something, inside baseball, and I told someone this story earlier, Kyle can back me up, the crap this man had to endure inside the halls of the legislature over this piece of legislation. Guys, he went in and fought the good fight against overwhelming odds, and frankly, the opposition was not necessarily to the contents of the bill. It was the fact that they were going to be held accountable by their constituents for their position on the bill. Because TEXIT is a black or white issue. There is no gray that they can live in. They're either for it or they're against it. And boy, they hate to be nailed down, man. They're like Jell-O, right? Squish. They're just so squishy. I'm still not sure if it's orange Jell-O or lime Jell-O yet, but that's just the way they are. And Kyle fought the good fight. Even called a press conference in the waning hours of the legislative session to call these guys on the carpet. And then we proceeded to play the virtual testimony that they would not have in a committee hearing. Now, a little fact about that. When it was clear that Chairman Chris Patty would not call this thing for a hearing, we opened it up for virtual testimony from people all over Texas. We said, submit your video. We use the same rules, 3 minutes or less for your testimony. You got to be germane. You got to all the same rules. By the time it was all over with, in a 6-day window, by the time that press conference happened, something became clear. Had that bill been by itself in a committee hearing, it would have been the most testified bill in the history of the Texas legislature in one hearing. Strung together, all of the testimony ran back to back to back for over 24 hours. It would have been historic. But it betrayed why they stood so hard and fought against Kyle and fought against you and fought against all of us to keep us from voting on this issue. Because they have said time and time again that this is, again, we go back to the beginning. These people don't exist. TEXIT supporters don't exist. And if they do, they're just a bunch of old white guys that are disgruntled, a bunch of racists. I mean, you guys have heard it. Your Tea Party, you've been slurred too. Don't pretend like I'm the only one that's been called these things. But that testimony proved, if that had been seen publicly in that hearing, it would have shown them to be the liars they are. Some of the most interesting testimony, highlights, and then we'll move on because I know we're probably running tight on time, and I know you have questions, but here's the thing. 14-year-old Yona Ramos offered his testimony. Jewish, Hispanic, 14 years old, from San Antonio, gave one of the most eloquent defenses for the right of Texas to leave the Union that I've heard in less than 3 minutes on that testimony. Destroyed it. Another high school sophomore gave testimony where he destroyed the myth that it's unconstitutional and that it's illegal in less than 3 minutes, burned it to the ground. I would put him up against any legislator in that legislature right now. Veterans from every armed conflict since World War II. The oldest testimony being a World War II veteran who was 90 years old. Now, obviously, active duty folks could not testify, at least not in uniform, but I'm pretty sure there were some of those in there. Every profession you can imagine. Doctors, nurses. You know, the people now that they say can't treat us unless they get the jab, right? Blue collar, white collar, teachers, elementary teachers, high school teachers, college professors, restaurant workers, auto mechanics. Every demographic group in Texas was represented, all of them. You know, the people that they say don't exist. But you know, if they say we don't exist, then they could justify not giving us our rights under Article 1, Section 2. So the trick here, folks, is to ensure that they know that we exist, that we are here, and we are not going away. And no longer will we tolerate being sidelined on the issue of our independence and self-government. Am I right? Right. So here's where we are. Many of you, when you came in, probably signed the petition. If not, we need you to sign it on your way out. At the beginning of the legislative session, we made a very public promise that anyone who did not stand with Kyle on 1359 was going to get an opponent. And guess what? We started recruiting. And we are still recruiting. And we're going to challenge every stinking one of them that we can. But it's a two-prong attack, because that second prong was sprung in June when we launched a petition campaign. There's a little known provision in the Texas Election Code that allows us, if we collect enough signatures, to put the question on the primary ballot, an approach that they were not anticipating. I love surprising the enemy. It makes me happy. There's nothing that makes me happier than causing Kyle's colleagues to have intestinal distress. Maybe we should make a note. Let's send them all Imodium during the special, just for fun. I think we should do that. Okay, sidebar. Sorry, guys. But this is what this means. Here's the practical effect. We hit the requisite number of signatures, and with the candidates that we are recruiting, plus the great guys like Kyle that are going to come back and fight this thing out in the next session, that means that you will be able to go to the ballot box in March. And you'll be able to crack open that electronic thing, whatever they're going to switch to, and you're going to spin that wheel. And on that ballot will be this question: should the state of Texas reassert its status as an independent nation? You're going to get a vote. We are committed to delivering where the legislature failed. But here's what's even better. Not only are you going to have that, but in as many races up and down the ballot as we can all across Texas, you're going to be able to vote for candidates that will enact your will on that vote. So 2022 is the year that we can flip over the entire chessboard, that we have an opportunity to take it all back and answer the burning question that we've wanted to ask all along. And we can make TEXIT happen. We have to, because it's not just for us. It's for our children, and their children, and their children, and their children. Because you see, The opposition has made their plans known. And we have to ask ourselves whether or not we want future generations to live under that type of tyranny. So the choice is yours, folks. The choice is yours. When I leave here tonight, I will be going to another corner of Texas to meet with people just like you who the legislature said didn't exist. And I will be telling them about the opportunity that we have to do this, but tonight is your night. Tonight is your night to seize an opportunity laid before you, much like Colonel Travis drew that line in the sand on the 12th day of the Alamo and called on the defenders to make a choice. I have laid it out, but the decision, the choice, is yours to make. If you choose to step on this side of the line, understand that it's going to take work and effort. You're going to not only just have to sign a petition, you're going to have to help us get petition signatures, and you're going to have to talk to people. You're going to have to open your mouth, and you're going to have to be known. You're going to have to be visible. That thing we did at the very beginning, you don't understand probably how powerful that was. To be able to shout out that you are ready for TEXIT. Shout it from the rooftops. Because this is not plan B. This is the only plan. It's for all the marbles. This is our moment, and we have to seize it. So I'll leave you with these words before we go to whatever the timing is. Okay, then the Q&A will have to be short, but I'll hang around afterwards. But I want to leave you with these words. After Texas entered the Union, many of the Texans were a little bit forlorn because they believed that even with all the adversity that Texas could make it as an independent nation. And so Sam Houston said these words. He said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. My friends, that time is right now. And the only question is, will you stand with her? I want to thank you for your time and indulgence tonight. I appreciate you so much, folks. Thank you.